Let's talk about Star Wars Visions. A rather contentious subject, with some claiming that anime will totally save Star Wars, and yet others stating that Star Wars will, if anything, just ruin anime as well. And it is a very relevant topic, because right now a lot of us are looking more and more to the east, to anime, to manga, for our entertainment, after having been royally screwed over by Western entertainment, which all too often is obsessed with pushing a political agenda far more so than actually being, interesting to watch. And having now perused the visions for myself, I can confidently say that both parties have claimed elements of the truth in this particular debate. Because the majority of the 9 episodes long visions, each episode being its own self-contained mini-story, are not very good. The problem being that the person that's telling the story doesn't really want to tell a Star Wars story. The first episode is an excellent example of this. It is an homage to old-school samurai movies, which is cool in and of itself, in its own way, except for the goddamn lightsaber umbrella. But the problem is, that has nothing to do with Star Wars. This is not a Star Wars story. This is an old samurai movie story that has simply had a coat of Star Wars paint splattered all over it. That's not going to help Star Wars, but it is going to damage anime. By making a fairly interesting and pretty unique setting as well, old-school samurai movies into modern-day Disney-fied pop culture nonsense. Now, visually, however, it is really good looking, and so is the second episode as well, but it, if anything, has even less to do with Star Wars, focusing on a band of friends getting together and conquering evil via music. So far, the Star Wars will simply make anime crap crowd is clearly in the lead, as again, it's not that necessarily this can't work, because here's one point as well. One of the reasons why anime and manga has had so much success is the breadth of things you can represent in it. The isekai genre is a fantastic example of this, where instead of simply just reprinting the same story exactly over and over and over and over and over and over, Japan instead approaches the same core concept, the isekai concept of getting reincarnated in a different world and then being surrounded by a harem of hot elves from different directions. In one isekai, the main character is reborn as a toddler with magical abilities and has to rise through the ranks and you go through his early life. In another isekai, he's dumped on the planet already super powerful and just gets to own everybody. In a third isekai, the main character is reborn as a goddamn sword or a fridge, etc. It is all the same central theme, but there are enough small variations on it to speak to their own particular audiences. And this is a huge strength in anime and manga. There is something aimed at pretty much everyone somewhere within its vast, cavernous, welcoming halls. And hell, I'm not even saying that this couldn't work. You could take one of those dozens of kids Star Wars shows now, for example, that try to be Star Wars but kidify it down to the point where it isn't regardless, and simply make a kids Star Wars shows but like this instead. You can absolutely do that, but as far as an actual Star Wars show goes, this isn't very good either. And then we finally get a little bit of a turnaround with episode number 3. You've probably seen a few cuts and clips of this one wandering around the internet with various suggestions that they ripped off Kill la Kill. No, they didn't. It's the same studio that made Kill la Kill, and the thing is, in anime, there's gonna be a lot of cliches. the whole crossed swords yelling at each other thing, that's entirely normal. And this is over-the-top nonsense. There are two people without spacesuits standing on top of a Star Destroyer, breathing and talking to one another in space with no problems whatsoever. Now, they're both very powerful Siths and Force users, so alright, you can give them a certain degree of levity there, but it's absolute absurdist nonsense. Though it does give us a fairly interesting story. And before I get onto the story element here, let me make one thing clear as well, because this is going to be key in all of the good ones. The pacing is awful, simply because they are making a very short episode, and so they are trying to cram a movie's amount of story into a 10 to 20 minute segment. It's gonna cause some problems, unsurprisingly, and this is one of them. We are introduced to a pair of siblings that have been created through Dark Force experiments to be precise, a brother and sister, created from, it seems, the same set of cells, etc., and they are now going to launch the Empire's reconquest of the galaxy to bring order and to beat the shit out of the Republic. All of that good nonsense. But one of the two, the brother, has a Force vision that sees where the dark side will lead his sister, and he is far more interested in his sister surviving than he is any Dark Force objective. And so he steals the magical MacGuffin thing, and his sister needs to chase him down, and they have a stupid battle on the roof of a Star Destroyer. It all sounds fairly nonsensical, because it is, but the thing here that is at the core of it, this is a familial bond story. It is a pair of siblings that have worked together, they have had the same goals for years and years, they have a deep connection with one another, and now they are split apart, not due to a deep disagreement, but rather because the brother loves the sister so much that he is willing to throw away all of his previous ambitions, all of his previous goals, and everything he's ever known up until this point, just to save her. He is even willing to betray her to do it. That is a very cool idea. Not one that can be expanded upon well over the course of 20 minutes, mind you, but it is a really cool story. And we'll get back to the topic of familial bonds in a bit, because it is the strongest part of these stories. The fourth episode is nothing of particular interest. A wandering Jedi saves a small mountain community. Basic bitch hero story, essentially. Number 5 is another gem, honestly. It introduces us to a more realistic Rey. And I know that almost sounds like an insult. Like, oh, you're a more realistic Rey. You're a more articulate cardboard box, but that is not the point I'm trying to raise. The female character here has been raised around lightsabers her entire life, so she's quite good at wielding one. She's also known an actual Jedi for her entire life, ever since she had been born. And this person has been grooming her, that's a bad term to use here, has been raising her to become a Jedi as well, training her in secret whilst trying to make sure that the Siths don't realize what he's doing, as he's secretly trying to rebuild the Jedi Order. It also has a couple really cool little plots. It subverts expectations in the good way, not the Disney way, where it's simply just like, oh, you thought this would be good, well, we just made it shit. Instead, it actually presents a fairly layered story that, again, if this had been like a 12 episodes, 20 minutes each actual anime, I think this could have been a real bloody gem. As it is a very good story that just doesn't have the time to percolate. It has all of the usual good bonds. It has a character who is thrown into an unknown, dangerous situation, who bravely stands up and tries to fight against overwhelming odds, and only wins due to the help of others, and then has to go off and save her father from the evil forces. It is a very solid fundament for a story. Moving on, the 6th episode is the literal definition of too much goddamn Japan. That's all I'll say about that. Number 7 is meh. Again, it's about as descriptive as I'm going to get. Number 8, this is another cool one. and where we will really talk about the familial bond, because this is something that has been completely forgotten in a lot of Western entertainment. The first Star Wars movies was heavily focused around the idea of family, of friendship, and relationships growing through adversity. The final scene of it was forgiveness, where Luke realizes that his father still has some good in him and forgives him. It is all about family, all about relationship, all about those strong personal bonds. And this is a tale of a family split apart by differing views on the Empire's role on their planet. The father thinks the Empire is an invader and needs to be thrown out through insurrection and sabotage. The daughter thinks that is all too drastic. The Empire has brought technological progress to their world, and she can't abide by her father's clearly terrorist actions. And in the middle of this is the adoptive daughter, the furry, trying to save her family. Again, this is a very solid plot point. It almost feels like the good stories in the Visions are proof of concepts, are story pitches going like, hi, wouldn't this be a really cool history? And it would be. It starts with the furry getting adopted into the family by the young, energetic, and kawaii as all hell daughter, who turns to the dark side and joins the Empire. Again, the pacing is awful, and she goes from being cutesy and adorable to evil like that. Because again, you're trying to compress a movie's amount of plot into like 20 minutes. It's not gonna goddamn work, but with more time, with more setup, this is absolutely a good idea for a story. One that, again, Star Wars completely lacks. Look at Disney Wars, right? The only bonds in Disney Wars are those being goddamn severed. Luke Skywalker, with his ideals, his honor, trying to kill his friend's child. Han Solo, with his son, and eventually with his life, not to mention his essential estrangement and breakup with Leia. And Rey and her new cadre, what bonds does she have to anyone? What, to Ren? This half-baked, ridiculous, semi-lovey kind of plot that nobody really understands what the hell was? They have some kind of a connection, but what is it? Do they want to boink each other? Does he just want to convert her? Does she just want to help him? Is he the hopeless boyfriend that she's gonna save? And then you've got the other characters, well, like Poe Dameron. What is his bond to anyone beyond being that dude who supposedly flies good and occasionally shows up in scenes? What is his relationship to anyone beyond being a character in the plot, essentially? And Finn, too. Finn's entire story begins with one of his fellow stormtroopers reaching up to him, placing a bloody hand mark on his helmet, and just sliding off. And you'd think that would be a tragic scene where he goes like, Jesus, shit. This war nonsense is horrible. My fellow stormtroopers are being slaughtered by the rebels. This is awful. Instead, he goes, right, I'm a rebel now. Die, brothers, die. What the? God. I mean, even through the story too, like in the first movie, it's kind of like maybe he's a romantic interest for Rey, kinda. Then in the second movie, he finds himself an Asian side character, and that's kind of a romantic subplot. Then she disappears, and then in the third movie, he's also there like. There's no reason for these characters to stay together beyond the plot demands it. This is why I think that, in many ways, for all of its many weaknesses, Japan is a good country to, well, I'm not going to say that they will save Star Wars, because, again, the majority of these episodes are nothing special to write home about. They are genuinely not. But at the same time, they remember something that we over here in the West have just forgotten, honestly. So the worst part is too, a lot of anime and manga is inspired by our storytelling. A recent popular one, for example, Boku no Hero Academy, is essentially a long love letter to Western comics. Hell, All Might is... his special attacks are named after American states. He is wearing red, white, and blue. He is an homage to America and American superheroes. And yet over here in the West, what do we have? What does modern-day Marvel make? They make Fat Thor. They make Female Thor. They make Black Female Iron Man. They make Ask Me About My Feminist Agenda Captain Marvel nonsense. Japan has learned the lessons that we have forgotten. And therefore, whilst I am not in any way saying that they're going to be the saviors of Star Wars, because they're just as capable of making shit as anybody else. In any given anime season, there's usually as much trash as there are gems by far. Hell, usually the gems can be few and far between, but they do understand this better than us. It really does, and hopefully this will be a little bit of a test scattershot kind of attempt by Disney to go, alright, Japanese studios, make us 9 proof of concepts, essentially. And then we'll go through them and we'll go, okay, this got this reaction, this got this reaction, this is what we need to do, this is what we need a little bit more of, this is what we need a little bit less of. And hopefully the key takeaway is bonds. Motivations, rationales, reasons for the story to occur beyond, well, these the good rebel guys and these the bad empire guys, so kill them all, I say. Anywho, I wanted to have a little bit of a rant on this topic, because I do think, again, this is absolutely a fantastic example of the problems we have in our entertainment and some ways to perhaps begin to fix it. It's an excellent example of how to do a setting, if not perfect, then at the very least a hell of a lot better that Disney is currently doing it. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.